Welcome to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. Real stories, brave voices, radiant perspectives. This is the podcast for parents and caregivers of autistic and neurodivergent children and teens. I'm your host, and each week we hold space for honest conversations, shared struggles, and hard-won victories from those who truly live it. You're not alone, your story matters, and it starts here. Welcome to Voices Beyond the Spectrum Resource Hub Edition. This is the space where we go beyond awareness into real conversations that matter, conversations that bring understanding, connection, and change. Today's episode touches on something deeply important. We are talking about safety, communication, and the very real experiences that can happen when individuals on the autism spectrum or with other disabilities interact with first responders. Before we begin, I do want to share that this episode includes a video that may be difficult to watch. It reflects the real life type of situations where there's a lack of understanding and training when it comes to autism. The reason we are sharing this is not to create fear, but to create awareness, urgency, and understanding, because this is exactly why conversations like this matter. So let me play the video for you.
I'm okay.
Remember this video? It's the body camera footage of a police officer who mistook a boy with autism for a drug user, made national news, and was an embarrassment for Buckeye police, who continue to defend that officer.
ABC 15 Chief Investigator Dave Biskobing broke the story back in 2017. Now, more than 5 years later, that boy's lawsuit will finally go to trial next week. Here's Dave with what to expect.
This trial is expected to last about a week, and it'll be in federal court, so no cameras are allowed. Now, we got the pretrial order, and it lists the arguments both sides will make. But before we get to all that, let's take a look at how this all began. When the police officer pulled up to a neighborhood park, things quickly got out of control.
What's going on?
Me?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Good.
What are you doing?
I'm stimmy.
What?
I'm stimmy with this.
What is that? Stop walking away from me.
It's a stream.
Okay, so why are you bouncing around all the way? You have any ID on you?
No.
Don't go anywhere. All right, just relax.
Are you okay?
Okay. Stay down.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
The officer was David Grossman. The boy, Connor Leibel, 14 at the time. Connor has autism. He was in the park across the street from the place where his sister was being dropped off for a music lesson by a caregiver.
Who's this?
Diane.
He's fighting with me. What's going on? Do you know him? Okay.
You can't see it on the body camera, but Grossman and Connor fell into a tree, leading to these scrapes and this injured ankle.
Relax. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have nothing on you, right?
No.
Okay.
He's only 14 years old.
The trial will come down to two claims. Connor's lawyer arguing that this was excessive force and a violation of his rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
So you drove by and you saw him stimming and you thought he was on drugs?
A couple of times, yeah.
You don't know anything about autism, huh?
And before we tell you the main points of Buckeye's defense, we need to talk more about that string. This is home video of Connor, quote, stimming with a string. Stimming is a coping mechanism, basically a repetitive movement that calms people with autism. And in their defense, Buckeye says Grossman suspected it was evidence of drug use. Quote, he had reasonable suspicion to initially stop Connor and conduct an investigation into the possible illegal use of an inhalant. And a string did not cause that suspicion to go away because Officer Grossman knew that items such as strings can be dipped into inhalants, hand sanitizers, or rubbing alcohol and used as part of the process of using illegal inhalants.
Okay, so why are you bouncing around all the way?
Now, back in 2017, Connor's mother told us she couldn't believe an officer could confuse her autistic son as a drug user, especially since Officer Grossman was a, quote, drug recognition expert.
We have problems with some kids, smelling inhalants, things like that, almost like gasoline, stuff like that. So I wasn't sure if that's what was going on.
Now, David Grossman is no longer an officer. He retired under a disability claim. And again, as for the trial, it's scheduled to begin on February 21st and last about a week. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15, Arizona.
Stay down.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
The big story on 12 News at 10. A teen with autism speaks out about this frightening encounter with a cop who mistook him for a kid on drugs.
Good evening. I'm Joe Dana in for Mark Curtis tonight. The 14-year-old was playing with a string in a park to calm himself down when the officer approached.
Team 12's Kevin Kennedy joins us from the Live Alert Center with what the boy and his mom say happened next.
Yeah, in the span of about 20 seconds, Connor Leibel went from playing with his string to screaming and on the ground. His mom says it's all because an officer made a quick and careless decision.
He's beautiful.
Every family has a story, and when you have 3 kids, you have plenty.
They're at Disneyland.
Danielle Leibel is one proud mom, but the latest story for this family has her in tears.
I cry every time that I do see it.
What are you doing?
This is what Danielle is talking about, a July encounter between her 14-year-old son with autism and a Buckeye police officer.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
I feel that there was unnecessary force used.
Buckeye police say the officer thought Connor was on drugs, when in actuality he was stimming, a repetitive motion common for people with autism.
It felt like it's just such a violation to my son. Like at that point, it's like, ignorance is not an excuse.
We got to meet Connor and ask him what happened.
He tackled me and then he pushed me on the tree and then he didn't stop.
And this is typical.
The family sharing video of Connor stimming, which we saw firsthand during our interview. What you hear Connor saying is part of his coping mechanism. Simply put, Connor was doing what he's been taught.
My son followed his commands. He answered every question. He needed to take some more time. There was no need to make any split-second decision.
Danielle is asking for an independent investigation, autism training for the entire department, community service for the officer, and one more thing.
He should then tell me that he's sorry to me.
It's been almost 4 months since the incident, and the family claims police have yet to reach out. No apology, no phone call, nothing. And for this mom, seeing her son go through this still hurts. File a complaint with the department, but it has basically gone nowhere. The department is, however, in the process of providing autism training to all of its officers. We're in the Live Alert Center. I'm Kevin Kennedy, 12 News at 10.
What you just saw is the reason this conversation is so important. It is why initiatives like the Blue Envelope exist. It is why training awareness and collaboration between families, organizations, and law enforcement are not optional, they are necessary. Today, I am honored to be joined by 3 incredible individuals who are doing meaningful work to bridge the gap and create safer, more informed communities. Dr. C.J. Cook serves as the Program Administrator for Community Services at Inland Regional Center, where he oversees community engagement, training and development, emergency services, and service access and equity. His work focuses on reducing disparities and strengthening systems that support individuals and families. His leadership and commitment to public safety and equity bring a critical perspective to this conversation. We are also joined by Audrey Maqueira, educated advocate, speaker, and community partner whose work is rooted in her lived experience as a mother. Audrey has been a strong voice in building awareness, acceptance, and inclusion, and works closely with the first responders community to strengthen understanding of autism through education and connection. And joining us as well is Corporal Ermes Maqueira from the Ontario Police Department with 17 years of service. He currently serves on the community engagement team and as a public information officer, as both a law enforcement professional and a father of a child on the spectrum. He brings a powerful and unique perspective. He is the founder of the department's Autism Awareness Program, helping improve communication and interactions between officers and the autism community. I am truly grateful to have each of them here for the important conversation. So let's begin. I want to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. This is such an important conversation, and I truly appreciate the work that each of you is doing to bridge the gap between families, communities, and first responders. I do want to start with you, Dr. C.J. Cook. I would love for you to start with you helping us ground on the bigger picture. Can you share a little bit of what the Blue Envelope Initiative is and how it got started? And just basically the process that led up to this development.
Sure. So the San Bernardino Blue Envelope Program is a voluntary, self-implemented, non-registry, community-led safety and communication initiative designed to support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That includes individuals with autism, intellectual disability, which is IQ below 70, epilepsy, and cerebral palsy. As well, we included individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing who may have a communication barrier during interactions with law enforcement and first responders. The program itself emphasizes community engagement, training, and education while building bridges between the communities served and the public safety agencies to promote understanding, trust, and a safer interaction. It all began here in San Bernardino County as a grassroots collaboration between Inland Regional Center, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, and the Autism Society Inland Empire. And we included families and individuals with lived experience when we created our program. And now we also encompass Riverside County, including cities such as Riverside, Menifee, and soon Hemet. The program has expanded to include partnerships with over 30 law enforcement agencies, including Ontario Police Department, who are here with us today. The program was intentionally developed with the community, not for the community, ensuring that the tools and training reflect real-world needs. And we did this through 3 years of research and development, working with our law enforcement partners and talking to those individuals that's most impacted in a police interaction. At its core, the program provides an actual blue envelope for the drivers, and it's important to say that this envelope has documentation in it and communication cues during a traffic stop. But we emphasize that the blue envelope itself is not intended for a parent or a caregiver. It is specifically for the driver of a vehicle who has an intellectual or developmental disability, could be deaf, hard of hearing, or otherwise have a communication barrier. As well, the envelope should not be used outside of the vehicle, and the individual receives specific training on its usage. This distinction makes the outreach and training component of our program critical. Now, alternative tools are offered to those individuals who are not in a vehicle. It could be lanyards, bracelets, car decals, seatbelt covers, or keychains. These are for non-drivers, which in reality is the vast majority of the individuals that we serve at Inland Regional Center and through the Autism Society. Training for first responders and individuals is grounded in lived experience and scenario trainings. One of the key training points is that when we're working with an individual who may choose to participate in the Blue Envelope program, we always stress that it's not a get out of jail free card. We make sure they understand that it is a communication and safety tool designed to support effective interactions, and it is not a means of avoiding accountability.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Dr. Cook. Can you now go into what need or gap was identified that led to this development?
Yeah, absolutely. So the gap during the research projects, the gap was very clear. There was no consistent, trusted, and non-invasive way for individuals with an intellectual or developmental disability or communication barrier to safely communicate during high-stress interactions with law enforcement and first responders. Families and individuals most impacted shared real concerns with us during the research portion of our development of the Blue Envelope. Some of the things they shared was miscommunication and escalating into crisis. So the actual miscommunication with the law enforcement officers was leading to escalation and then making the crisis much worse. There was the lack of awareness among first responders about IDD and deaf and hard of hearing communities, and fear of systems that felt like surveillance or registries. Now, let me give you an example of some of the things that parents had shared with us during the research portion of the development. So there was no way to effectively communicate to a law enforcement officer or first responder that their child had a developmental disability. And the police department were being called because of stimming incidents or parents having to help adult children use the restrooms. So some of the parents felt like they were being under surveillance in like a mall because their child stemmed, the police would show up. We had one mother said that her son was rather large. He was on the spectrum. And when they were in the community, she had to help him go to the bathroom. So she would actually pin a large sign on her son describing that he had autism, and she had to help him use the restroom or describing his characteristics. Now that could be taken care of pretty easily with the items that we purchased and put into our program. And that saves the families from having to feel like they're doing a registry. I mean, putting a big sign on your child in reality is a registry. But they were struggling and trying to find any mechanism that they could to ensure that their children could go into the community without stigma or without the fear of someone surveilling them and calling the police department. So when we created the Blue Envelope program, we did it to directly address some of these concerns. It provides simple, immediate communication tools. If people come to our training, law enforcement officers are aware, they see the Blue Envelope lanyard, bracelet, or keychain, and they automatically know from their training that person may have a developmental disability, have hard of hearing, or have a communication barrier. So now there's an understanding between those that we serve and those officers and first responders being called to these incidents, which is really just an individual with a characteristic that other people do not understand. We in no way have a registry, which goes back to surveillance and registries of the parents' concerns. So we do face-to-face interactions. We have safety fairs, trainings, we have conversations. We never take down names, addresses, or disabilities. And this is all centered on dignity, autonomy, and choice. No one has to participate in our program. We want to provide them with an option, something that's less evasive, where they can go into the community without fear of being labeled or having the police department called on them.
Thank you very much. And then for our listeners, the word stimming was brought up. Stimming is repetitive movements, whether it's with the hands, also through echolalia, repeating themselves over and over again, for those that are not aware what that term stimming is concerned. So a lot of the times when an individual, say an autistic individual, is feeling stressed or oversensored, they will do repetitive movements. They will also repeat over and over a certain phrase that provides them self-regulation. So for those listening that don't know and understand what stimming is, that's basically a small definition of what stimming is. And then now going from systems perspective, why was this initiative so important right now?
You know, from a systems standpoint, this initiative sits at the intersection of public safety, healthcare, and social services. Right now, systems are being called to improve crisis response outcomes for individuals with developmental disabilities. They're being called upon to reduce unnecessary escalation and use of force during incidents and address equity gaps in access to treatment. So the Blue Envelope program is important because it bridges system silos between regional system centers, or regional centers, law enforcement, first responders, and community organizations. So when you just define stimming, so you think about individuals in the mall that are not aware of what stimming is or understand that someone may stim just solely because it's a characteristic of their disability. Those community organizations receive training from us, and it helps bridge that gap with them as well. They not be first responders, but we continue to educate everyone so there's a general understanding. And then those silos are starting to become a little less separated, and everyone's starting to understand and work together. But it also provides scalable, low-cost interventions with immediate impact. It aligns with broader statewide and federal conversations around alternative crisis response models. We want this to be a federal model and a state model because the bridges to the law enforcement community and our first responders is critical. Times of disasters, officers are going to respond. Fire department do not go door to door to tell people to evacuate during a fire. It's the police department. If someone runs away and is missing, the police department is looking for them. So we have to have our individuals served trust that someone in uniform is going to be there when they need them. And that bridge is critical to build. We deal with a lot of advocacy groups who advocate for families to avoid law enforcement interactions. In reality, that's not possible in our world today. And this program ensures that everyone understands everyone, and then they are learning from each other at the same time. When we have a training, officers are learning from people with developmental disabilities, and they are learning from officers about certain characteristics they have, and they're building an understanding, and that understanding leads to trust. And that trust will save someone's life in the end. It also timely because it reflects a shift towards preventive as opposed to being retroactive enforcement. So the communication-based solutions will help us be preventive instead of being retroactive when something goes wrong. So today, we're building all these bridges and community partnerships, which down the road will probably continue to grow, hopefully. But in the end, someday we're going to have to rely on this system for someone to be safe and be rescued or save a life. And that's what's important to us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And how does this connect to a broader efforts around service access, equity, and public safety?
That's a great question because the program is a direct extension of our service access and equity efforts at Inland Regional Center, and it aligns with the Autism Society and all the agencies that we work with. We purchase our materials, and we fund the program through language access and cultural competency efforts, which is funded by the Department of Developmental Services. So it advances equity by ensuring individuals who are often underserved, especially those who are nonverbal, deaf, hard of hearing, monolingual, or from marginalized communities, have tools that support safe interaction. And those tools include training and that exposure to officers in uniform with the radios and all the stuff that's on their gun belt. It helps them start to be desensitized and build trust. We're embedding cultural humility and disability awareness into all of our trainings. We created it with that in mind, and we work with officers. We have heartfelt conversations about humility and awareness, and it removes the barriers tied to language, cognition, and communication differences. So from a public safety lens, and I'm sure Corporal Maqueira is going to talk more about it, but it enhances officer awareness and decision-making in real time. And it builds trust between communities and law enforcement, supports safer outcomes for everyone involved. So in the end, we're all working together for a common goal, which is what the Lanterman Act promised our individuals when it was signed, that everyone has equal access into the community without fear of being marginalized or stigmatized.
And that's the ultimate goal. And I think that's why many organizations work together, you know, to be able to create this harmonious process behind all of it. What impact have you seen so far, or what outcomes are you hoping to see long term?
Well, long term, we'll start there. I wanted to continue. We have to get more agencies in Riverside County on board. We have to create some processes to make life a little bit easier for us, because we're kind of doing this pro bono throughout the state and throughout the United States, to be honest with you. But here locally, the impact to date is we provided over 22,500 blue envelope safety kits. That includes the lanyards, the bracelets, the keychains, the car decals, and the seatbelt covers. We trained more than 4,500 first responders. That's across law enforcement, fire, emergency service personnel, and emergency services like emergency operations centers, American Red Cross staff. And one of the things I'm most proud of is we've integrated this short 15-minute training into our crisis intervention training at the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. So every officer or deputy graduates, attends a 40-hour crisis intervention training. We teach 3 hours of that solely on the characteristics of developmental disabilities. And at the end, we introduce the blue envelope to ensure that they're aware of it before they ever go into the streets to police our communities. And then adoption and recognition as best practice model statewide. And I just got to throw this in there because I think we're all very proud of this. It is informing federal legislation, and it's supporting the Blue Envelope Act introduced by Congresswoman Norma J. Torres. And hopefully, once that becomes into a law, we're able to expand in all 50 states and provide support. But there's funding available through this process that will help law enforcement agencies partner with community partners like a regional center in other states, the services who work with the developmentally disabled, to create programs and build those bridges back to the community.
And from a mother's perspective that has a child that has profound needs, and this is a constant worry for not only myself, but also the community that I serve, I want to say thank you. You know, thank you for addressing an issue that has been in need to be addressed for a very long time. And also thank you for laying the foundations and helping us really understand the bigger picture. Is there any other additional thoughts you want to add? If not, I would love to invite Audrey to tell us how she brings in the community and the family perspective into the Blue Envelope Initiative.
Absolutely. And before Audrey jumps in there, I want to say that Audrey is kind of the driving force behind us. She's not going to admit to it, but if we have a meeting with 19 law enforcement agencies, chances are she called and bugged all 19 to get them there. Something that I'm not good at, that she does very well. But we are where we are today because of her ability to put people in a room and have conversations with them that sometimes are very difficult, but also with the bigger picture of we serve a community that needs help and we need their help to make sure everyone's safe. So I really appreciate Audrey and Corporal Maqueira too. I'm going to give him there's always an Audrey behind us. If you see us somewhere, that is why we're there, and it's because of her.
Love it. Love it. So Audrey, would you like to share?
Yeah. Thanks, CJ, for the shout out. You're so sweet. It's definitely a solid partnership between Autism Society and Inland Regional Center, pushing this program through the community for sure. It definitely is not a program that's easily maintained. So many hands make light the work, and so bringing in all the law enforcement agencies, I tease CJ all the time, like, I'm good with the law enforcement, but don't get me started on the legislative aspect of it. Like, I'm not good when it comes to the politics. Government was not my class that I got an A in at all. But networking and talking and pushing into departments is definitely comes natural for me. Being married to Corporal Maqueira at Ontario Police Department definitely has given me a broad perspective. And then also being a parent of an autistic son, we both have vested interest in this program personally, and now obviously professionally as well.
Thank you very much. And how has Autism Society been involved in supporting and expanding these efforts?
So I kind of mentioned already, and CJ kind of touched on it too, like my position as far as like pushing into the departments. Initially, before I was hired at Autism Society, I was just supporting my husband with the Blue Envelope program when his chief wanted it to be launched at the department. And so part of my support that I extended for him initially was to reach out to community partners or potential community partners that were based in the city. So we have our bigger organizations that support this program, but as our son gets direct services from, psychologists, from neurologists, from ABA companies, we thought it was important to also bring them in and make those smaller companies aware of this program and how it can help their clients that they serve. So that's initially how I got started personally, as far as like just assisting. Autism Society was one of the partners that we initially made contact with. And I had met Beth years ago when I would take our son Ryan to some of the outreach events that Autism Society was holding. And so when I was kind of tasked with reaching out, cold calling at really these companies, Beth was one of my first contacts that I made to ask her for Autism Society support on the program. Unbeknownst to me, obviously, she was working with CJ at Regional Center on this project already. So that's how initially I got involved in it. And then Beth invited Ermes and I to lunch, actually to talk about the potential for applying for that grant that Norma Torres we just got awarded, the grant that will help us kind of fund this, specifically partnering with some of our partnering agencies. Once I met with Beth and we reconnected, the intent was, we'll bring you on board once we get this grant. Now that was a year and a half ago. Beth, in her infinite wisdom, couldn't wait the year and a half for us to actually get that grant. And I was actually hired on 5 months after that first lunch. And so my responsibility as the first responder liaison incorporated the Blue Envelope. And so that's how I kind of got to partner with CJ and push this program forward in these agencies. So like CJ kind of highlighted, my sole responsibility really is to reach into these agencies, to have those communication with the departments, to find out who would be the best contact, find a liaison at these departments, and really work them step by step how to launch the program, focus on the education component so the department's aware on best practices, and then also reaching out into the community to kind of help gauge those questions, their concerns, what barriers they have as far as like their concerns with whether it is a registry, the barriers that they have going into the police lobbies to get the Blue Envelope materials, and making it more accessible through outreach events with these agencies.
And then what changes have you seen so far, or what changes are you hoping to see along in the community or with the first responders as the trainings continue to expand?
I would say one of my hopes moving forward is establishing very concrete practices for this program, navigating, explaining to the departments why we don't just hand out the envelopes to anybody, training those frontline staff members on how to have those types of conversations without asking for names, without asking for diagnosis, without asking for, kind of equipping not only the law enforcement specifically that's going to do the traffic stops, that's going to deal with the traffic collisions, moving more also into dispatch, helping serve the ladies at the front desk who are kind of going to have those conversations in addition to the law enforcement, and kind of navigating those non-crisis, non-emergency kind of interactions between the departments and our community to kind of help foster a more healthy relationship, to kind of break down those barriers of fear moving forward. So that's kind of like we're navigating the maintenance mode of the Blue Envelope program now with our partnering agencies. And then on the flip side, like CJ kind of mentioned, really pushing into Riverside County municipal departments. Another thing that we're really tackling right now is reaching into the fire departments and helping them feel equipped, aware of the training, aware of the program. So they're not necessarily going to be doing the traffic stops, but they are going to be the first responders a lot of times to like traffic collisions. And so if they're not aware of the Blue Envelope program, they don't recognize the the car decal or the individual in the car with the lanyard or the seatbelt cover, that could potentially create more barriers for the progress of this program as a whole. So those are some things that we're really working on this next year. I know we're really excited to be working with CHP and navigating a statewide at least 15-minute briefing training to help them be aware of the program, especially since they're going to be at a higher percentage of those traffic stops. So even we're navigating that partnership, how best to support that department and how best to support the program moving forward. Because as a state agency, it's a little different than working with a municipal police department. So those are some of the hopes moving forward, are definitely big picture, like we get reached out to on a pretty regular basis by out-of-state agencies, Orange County, LA County. We just met with the LA Sheriff's Department seeking support on how to launch this program. And it's really important for us to explain why and how our model is different than some of the other county models out there because of that training piece to make sure that the community is aware of best practices, but then also that law enforcement as a whole knows how to use the program and how it's a program to help them have better interactions with the community and why that's important in itself.
Perfect. And then based on, obviously, it has been a success. You guys are being reached out by, other counties and other departments. With that being said, from the Autism Society, is there any additional updates that are happening with Autism Society? And also, how can parents reach these blue envelope trainings?
Yeah, I would say that as far as the Autism Society is concerned, especially with regards to this grant, we are going to be working on partnering with some specific agencies to host safety fairs. And it's one thing that I would really encourage families, especially as a parent with an autistic child, going to these events when law enforcement, when departments host their open houses, when they do outreach events, going to them and encouraging those conversations between the parents, their loved one on the spectrum, or, any other disability that they may have, and not being afraid to have those conversations and let them, and especially in those non-crisis, non-emergency opportunities, bridge that gap so that the law enforcement can see the humanity behind what we have to go through, but then we're able as parents to also navigate seeing the humanity behind the uniform too. We have our walk coming up April 25th. I am putting together a safety fair. We're going to have some first responders out there. We expect 2,500 people to come. It's going to be in Paris. We have a big one that we're planning in partnership with the San Bernardino County Fire Department that we're going to have in Fontana and at Station 71. That's going to be in August. So we definitely have some stuff going on where families can come into a safe space. The first responders that participate as safety fair vendors at our events are comfortable with our community. They're aware of some difficult conversations that families may interact and have with them. We equip them just as much as we want to equip our community as well, letting them know that not to be afraid to have those conversations, and then navigating law enforcement, letting our families share their stories and let them have those conversations and be able to bridge that gap in a safe environment.
Thank you. And then for our listeners, I will attach all the links to their websites. Please follow Autism Society on Instagram, Regional Center. They're great at updating whenever there's a new blue envelope training happening for parents or any event. Great way to stay informed, as well as their websites. Or if you are on LinkedIn, also on LinkedIn. So any way you can follow to keep track of the trainings as parents, it's very important for us as parents to stay educated on what is available for our children, to be able to further advocate and to be able to further support these initiatives that will change the future outcomes of our individuals that are in need of that advocacy. And then, is there anything else you want to share, Audrey, before we have a chat with Corporal Maqueira?
Yeah, I would definitely say I think CJ and I both have had similar conversations with the community, with families, feeling like we aren't telling them about these events, these trainings that are coming up. Well, how do I find out? Well, I didn't know about it. And I would say one thing that we both tell the families is read the newsletters. All of our events, we send out, we tell the families, if they are a regional client, ask your CS about what's coming up. Follow the Instagram. Even like Ontario has a great Instagram page. Like they're constantly hosting events that I would encourage families. I mean, it's one thing that as parents we have to make it a point to do, right? We have to look. a lot of times it's not just going to be presented to us. And so I would say, I would definitely encourage families, don't give up. We have a lot of Blue Envelope trainings coming up. Regional Center hosts those. We partner with them. And so it's like, ask those questions. Know that there are trainings out there. I would encourage families, call your local law enforcement agency, ask about the Blue Envelope program. If they don't have it, then reach out to us and we can partner with our community to help get this program available. But it takes a village, right? So it's not that departments, and I would really stress this to families that are concerned, well, what about my city? Well, what about my police department? And they usually have a challenging story that pairs with their frustration. So navigating, these agencies don't not want this program, right? It's not about them not wanting to partner, but it does take time. And CJ and I have kind of figured out that at this point, it takes an agency about 6 months to launch the program, typically from start to finish. And that's with our support. That they have to figure out the funding. We have to figure out their distribution plan for these materials, on top of all the stuff that these departments are already navigating city to city, whether it's the crime rate, whether it's the various problems that they have. This is just one piece to the bigger puzzle that they have to figure out who's going to man it, who's going to work it, who's going to manage it. So I don't want the community to be frustrated with the progress, what may seem slow, because the behind the scenes, this is an everyday. CJ and I are tackling Blue Envelope. Every day we're reaching out to agencies. Every day we're working on our partnerships and managing to support how to get it out there, how to get the materials to these families, from law enforcement, from Autism Society, from Regional Center. So I would definitely say, at least just be patient, right? In 2025 alone, we were able to launch this program in 9 municipal police departments, 2 fire departments, in partnership with Riverside and San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, who already had the program, right? So these were additional municipal police departments that did not have the program. We were able to get them to successfully launch this program, which is a huge deal, right? So it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, moving into 2020, going bigger. We're still pushing into the municipal police departments. And so again, if you call the agency, they say they don't have it, don't hesitate to call back. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. It's a partnership that is a very positive partnership. There is no hesitation from these agencies to not work with us. And so navigating that, it just takes time. And so that's where, again, in the meantime, you can come to our events, come to our trainings events. Don't hesitate to ask those questions and feel empowered as a parent, navigating how to make this program benefit your family.
And I think that's the biggest part, right? Like making sure that parents are informed, making sure that parents are aware, because a lot of the times, yes, are some parents impatient? Yes. But at the same time, if you know the process and what it takes to get there, it allows that wiggle room to, be the one advocating. And maybe if you call enough times, they will get on it to reach out to you guys and get these initiatives going in that city. So thank you very much for sharing that. And it's great information for our parents to be aware of in case that program is not available in their city, how to get it started. Mm-hmm. Parents can move mountains. I know that. So thank you very much for sharing that. And that perspective is so important. So now it's your turn, Corporal Maqueira. I would love to bring you in so you can give us your perspective from the law enforcement side and walk us through the Blue Envelope and what it looks like in practice from an officer's perspective.
Thank you for having us. First and foremost, Dr. Cook, and obviously my wonderful wife. She's the neck that turns the head. So we obviously have a vested interest in programs like this because of our son. And it's definitely a passion project. I tell Beth all the time, I was like, you're a genius. You hired Audrey, but you got me in the background working with her, and vice versa. It's a team effort. We're definitely both very vested in the autism community and the IDD community, and bridging that gap between those two communities, our law enforcement family and also our autism family. So just to talk briefly about what the Blue Envelope looks like in practice out in the field. Most of my career I spent on patrol. Traffic stops are probably one of the most dangerous things that we do as police officers. So having a Blue Envelope program where the participant can put a blue decal on the back of their vehicle in the window, that serves as a visual cue to an officer as he's walking up to the vehicle. We don't know who we're stopping. We don't know who we're talking to. We don't know what's going on. Oftentimes we get dispatched to calls that have very minimal information where they say, hey, this car is speeding, cutting through traffic, doing this, doing that. We don't know who we're going to contact. So just having that little bit of information, that visual cue, helps us to kind of put everything together, look at it from the bigger perspective. And it also helps the driver who has the IDD, or if it's a parent or caregiver with their child who may be in the middle of a meltdown because they just left Chuck E. Cheese and their child is very upset and going through a meltdown in the backseat of the car. It helps the officer kind of use that visual cue to kind of put the puzzle piece together to figure out what's going on. Do you have a medical emergency? Do you need help? Or is it you just need to take a little bit of time for your child to calm down? And the Blue Envelope is just a part of our larger autism awareness program that we have at Ontario PD. We launched our autism awareness program about 3-4 years ago. And I refer back to a movie that our kids liked. It's called Robots. And in that, one of the characters is this little robot trying to find his purpose in life. And he's trying to find a gap or find a need that he can fill. So one of the quotes is there, see a need, fill a need. So I saw a need in our department to kind of raise awareness, to start the conversation. And 3-4 years ago, that's when I had my first meeting with Dr. CJ Cook and Beth, and kind of just pitched the idea of raising awareness with a patch program. And that's kind of where it started. Started very small. And then, 3-4 years later, here we are implementing programs like the Blue Envelope that are, reaching communities and agencies across the Inland Empire, and hopefully it will, continue to grow throughout the state and the nation. It's very beneficial because it allows individuals that have IDDs to identify themselves to law enforcement without having to say anything. So I think that communication tool is very vital.
And from your experience, what are some common misunderstandings that occur when there is not that proper training in place?
So in our model, training is essential, right? That's kind of where it differentiates. There are some other agencies throughout the state that have the Blue Envelope program, and they implement it a little bit differently. In San Bernardino and the model with IRC, we hone in strictly on the training for the officers and the community, how to use it, when to use it, if they want to use it at school. There are some individuals that, hey, I feel safe at school. I don't need to wear a blue lanyard, but as soon as I leave school, I feel like I need to wear it so I can identify myself in case something goes wrong or I get contacted by a police officer. When we launched our program last year, we sent out a training bulletin. We did briefing trainings. We also implemented live scenarios in our advanced officer training that we do pretty much every month or every other month. One of our officers, Officer Eric Wyden, he has vested interest too. And that's the other thing is we start the conversation and you have other people joining you and saying, yeah, I have a child that's autistic, or I have a family member who's autistic. It brings everybody together. And this was the case with this particular real life scenario where Officer Wyden has his wife, like ABA therapist, and she pitched the idea to have that scenario in our annual officer trainings. It was very interesting to see the officers because they weren't told. They had the role player in our mat room and they said, okay, you got called to a suspicious person at the park. And the role player's, has his hands over his ears and he's rocking back and forth. And you see the officers are trying to speak to him and he's, rocking back and forth, not saying anything. And they kind of look at each other like, I don't know what to do. And then slowly they kind of work through it and they figure out, hey, this person's autistic. This is what we do. Maybe implement the sensory kit to try to de-escalate and have them calm down. But that training component is vital to the survival of this program that we have. And I think is what makes it different. It's not just another program that's going to be left on a counter in a lobby and get dusty and forgotten. We have to keep breathing life into it. And that's how we do it. It's through the training in collaboration with IRC and our other partnering agencies.
And I love that because you don't know what you don't know, right? So when I first started my organization, I was going in circles as to what to call my organization. And I settled with the word empathy because I think that's something that is a skill that develops. And I think this training provides that development for those that don't know what they don't know. Audrey, Corporal Maqueira, you know what it's like to have a child with autism. You know what it looks like to have a child with a meltdown happening, and sometimes you can't control it. I know what that looks like, but not everyone out there does. So I think coming from that perspective, that very unique perspective where we live it, we breathe it on a daily basis, and we want everyone to understand so our children feel included, feel safe in other environments. So I think bringing in that perspective, joining with other individuals that could join you in that perspective really makes this an initiative that comes from the heart. It doesn't come from just policy. It comes from the heart, from truly trying to make a change for these individuals and their futures. With that being said, what would you want other law enforcement agencies to understand about implementing something like this?
Like we started small. Start small, and small steps make big differences. So, start small, start reaching out to your community partners. In Ontario, we have several different autism therapy companies. I feel like we're getting a new one every week. So there are community partners out there. Reach out to them, have those conversations, share information, reach out to your regional centers in your area, to the autism societies in your area. And partnerships and relationships is where we get ahead, because not any one person has the solution. It's together. Together we make the work light and we make it go forward, and we seek success that way. It's not the PD's doing this, IRC's doing that, Autism Society's doing this. It's all of us bringing our resources together, all of us having conversations sometimes that aren't pleasant, but really learning and gleaning from each other, and hearing from our autism community as well, saying, hey, this is what we can do differently. And the same way for them to understand why we do certain things. Like I remember there was a safety fair where a parent says, well, why do officers always put their hands on their gun and on their belt? And, Dr. Cook brought it up like, hey, with our belts, we can't reach our pockets. Like, it's impossible for me to put my hand underneath my gun holster. It's uncomfortable. So the most comfortable position is just to put our hands on our belt. So conversations like that, I think, are important in a non-emergency type of setting, where parents can feel comfortable coming up to officers and asking silly questions like that, or even more questions that are more in depth, or share an incident that they might have occurred or they experienced, something that they can learn from us and we can learn from them.
Yeah, and I see that very common. I mean, with a lot of the families that we serve, that initial almost not fear, but hesitation, to talk to an officer. By doing these blue envelope trainings, I think it opens up also not just from your perspective as organizations, but also from the parents' perspective, to change that perspective of an officer and have that open dialogue that might be uncomfortable at first, but once it's opened, things get cleared up, misunderstandings get cleared up, and there's that trust and that relationship building that comes between community, parents and additional partners. So I truly appreciate each and every one of you and your perspectives in your respective roles. But I would love to open it up to share final thoughts and any key takeaways you would want from our listeners after hearing this conversation.
I'll let Dr. CJ Cook go first.
At the end of the day, and you heard Audrey say it and Ermes say it too, we all have to work together. In order for anything to work, we have to have a shared understanding, and sometimes we have to have hard conversations. I think we've all, Corporal Maqueira, Audrey, Beth Burt, we've all had tough conversations with each other and with people out in the community. But it comes from a place of creating a program that will long outlive all of us, because autism, ID, cerebral palsy, deaf, hard of hearing community, they're always going to be here. And they're always going to need someone to advocate, not for them, but with them, to make sure that programs are developed, that their voices are being heard, and what they want is being built into the programs, which I think we did a great job of doing that. It's, for example, the training component that we've talked about, the scenarios, they're officers in uniform, and then the individuals playing the individual with a developmental disability is someone who actually has a developmental disability. So the audience is seeing this from a perspective of a person who actually struggles and lives with these disabilities every day, and then are learning from them. And all those things coming together has created one strong community in San Bernardino. You'd have to look at our website to see 30 some agencies that we work with. But the last thing I'll say before I turn over to Audrey is every single department we work with, there's a champion for change in that department. And typically they're personally affected by a developmental disability. And that's who we look to partner with because we need that inside person. And I'll also say that most of those officers are not being paid. They're working on weekends or they're just volunteering their time because they see the value in what we're doing and they want to make sure that they have the tools where they have to make a life to death situation decision, that they have the tools to make it and they have the ability to help those who, in reality, what they become cops to do is to protect those who couldn't protect themselves.
Definitely. Audrey.
Yeah, I would definitely piggybacking on what CJ's saying, I would say like just as much as us as parents, you know, when you meet somebody with autism, you've met somebody with autism, right? And we kind of use that as a point of reference with regards to broadening people's expectations of what they think they're going to come across out in the community when they meet somebody that's on the spectrum or has an IDD or even with cerebral palsy, right? Doesn't look the same for everybody. So, but the same is also true for law enforcement, right? You have one experience with an officer or a deputy that doesn't define all officers, all deputies, all departments, right? So that same open-mindedness that we want for our children essentially and for the community at large, that empathy, that sympathy, that, you know, that kind of open-mindedness, you know, as a wife of law enforcement, I want the same for my husband, right? So that dualistic lifestyle, that dualistic kind of approach has really granted me this amazing opportunity to help Dr. Cook and Beth Bird, our executive director, and these agencies with broadening those perspectives, with layering in more autism awareness training and cerebral palsy, epilepsy. You know, like there's a lot of communities out there that benefit from this program. You know, this program is specific for communication barriers. We're talking IQ below 70, very specific things. This isn't for mental health, right? So it's navigating how to support these communities where communication is an issue, right? And so being able to provide this program to these agencies, support them with training, give them the blue envelope swag for free, right? And it really is a major project. The fact that Inland Regional Center and Autism Society are partnering together for this with alongside our law enforcement partners, our firefighters, AMR, you know, like it is a groundbreaking progress that we're making. This program, this movement that we're a part of, like CJ said, it's well beyond all of us as individuals, you know, and so navigating the sustainability of this program, I'm just so grateful for all of our law enforcement partners. I'm so grateful for our liaisons and our champions at all these departments. You know, they're always there. They're there for us. You know, it's like navigating this doorway for this program has allowed us to also have conversations that go beyond this program. These relationships go beyond just launching the Blue Envelope program, right? So when we're doing these trainings in communities and we're reaching out to law enforcement, even if they don't have the Blue Envelope program, they're interested, they want to be involved, they want to be a part of this, right? They see the progress that we're making in San Bernardino County, and nobody has told me no. So that's a great indicator of the willingness of these departments to get on board and be and do what they can to support our community, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. It truly does create such an impact, especially when you have amazing partnership and everyone plays such key roles in everything. And to close it off, Corporal Maqueira.
Small changes make a big difference. It takes a village, like Audrey was saying. We all have to come together. We've been in the autism community, 15 years, and it's come a long way. I remember when we started our journey with our son, we didn't know what questions to ask or who to ask or where to go. And now we're 15 years down the road and we have partnerships with IRC and Autism Society and, you know, the various agencies where we're having those conversations, you know, having doors open to, you know, implement programs like the Blue Envelope, the sensory kits, autism specific training. And I'll tell a quick story that, you know, through these partnerships and the relationships that has expanded our resources as well. I remember going to a call on patrol and one of my partners actually showed up before I did. They were like, "Hey, does anybody have a sensory kit in their unit?" I don't have one. So I rushed over there and talked to him. It ended up being a little 7-year-old little boy who was autistic and very aggressive, very violent, and had kind of been 5150'd over and over again, was just going through this roundabout whirlwind and wasn't really getting anywhere, wasn't getting the help that he needed. And thankfully, I picked up the phone, I spoke to Beth, and I explained to her the situation and got the ball rolling, and we're able to kind of help that family out. So it's partnerships and relationships that help come to resolutions to things that like that, where maybe that he would have just gotten 5150 again and kind of got just lost in the system without really getting the help he needed. That's why relationships are vital. The partnerships are vital. And I would encourage, if there are other officers from other agencies that don't have any programs in place, start small. Go talk to your chief, go talk to your admin, and have those conversations, because it is needed. It's, in California, it's 1 in 19 are being diagnosed. It's not matter if you run across somebody who's autistic or has an IDD, it's when. So we have to do our due diligence and invest in ourselves, invest in our community, and get that extra training, partner with these other organizations so we can better serve our community, because at the end of the day, we're here to serve them.
And thank you for sharing that story. And you're right, those stories are more common than we think. And the fact that you went that additional step to be able to provide that additional support, not only for the child, but let's be honest, the diagnosis doesn't only just impact the child, it impacts the whole family.
Mhm.
So the fact that you made such a difference, not only in that child's life, but possibly the trajectory of where the family was going to go with that child, is significantly impactful. And for you to just be able to expand that knowledge to additional areas where there's other officers like you that can make that same difference with other families. I mean, what more could we ask for us as a community, and as a partnership? But again, thank you all for being here, for your time, for the work you continue to do. I am beyond blessed to have you here and explain this initiative and continue pushing forward on this. I'm definitely a supporter of everything all of you do. Thank you again. This episode was brought to you by Empathy for Autism California, Inc., featuring Dr. C.J. Cook from Inland Regional Center, Audrey Maqueira from Autism Society Inland Empire, and Corporal Ermes Maqueira from the Ontario Police Department. We are truly honored to have had each of them join us for this conversation and to share their time, expertise, and lived experience. Their work across systems, community advocacy, and law enforcement continues to make a meaningful impact in creating safer, more informed, and more inclusive communities for individuals and families. You can find Voices Beyond the Spectrum, Resource Hub Edition in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. You can also visit our website at empathyforautismcalifornia.com or access the link tree provided below to listen to this episode, explore additional resources, and connect with organizations featured on today's conversation. Feel free to share this episode with your networks and communities to continue spreading awareness and understanding. Music was brought to you by Brad Kaloof, with piano by Brad Kaloof and Sophia Chinen. This is Voices Beyond the Spectrum Resource Hub Edition. Real stories, radiant perspectives, and always led with empathy. Till next time.